Hi, this is Guy Wallace. I started in learning and development way back in 1979, and I semi-retired in 2023. But my current mission as a semi-retired L&D professional is to help enterprise learning and development organizations become more performance-based. Welcome to my podcast. Good day, Dan. First of all, let me thank you for agreeing to do this podcast with me. As we start, can you do three things for me? Can you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background about you in the learning and development space and in particular performance improvement, the performance-focused, performance-based orientation to all of that? And second, then just tell us whatever name you're giving your tool and or technique or techniques that you want to talk about. And then quickly just, where is this appropriate? What kind of performance context is this appropriate? Is this kind of a universal general thing, or is this very specific and targeted? Does that sound fair?
All right, that sounds great. Thanks, Guy. Lots to talk about. Yeah, Dan Topf. I'm nowadays we say we've been at this more than 10 years. So I've been at this more than 10 years. Learning and development, performance improvement, and I've chosen to focus my practice in business acumen. And when I talk to clients about that, I tell them I'm in the space between competency development, or what we might be talking about these days around skills. But I'm in the space between that and business results. And I have discovered that I can really have a lot of impact when I try to connect those two things, either through any of my programs, whether it's a operator training and design kind of frontline, teach me my job kind of project, or maybe some management leadership or even executive development. That's kind of my focus. Been at this more than 10 years. I'm a certified performance technologist. I think I was in one of the first 100. I really wanted to be one of the first. Mm-hmm. That was an important criterion, if you will, for me, to be one of the first, because I wanted to be with those folks. I wanted to be with that tribe. And and so I've been doing this for some time now. The thing that I was going to focus on today, Guy, is something that I learned early in my career, and I have found has served me well. I've put it on a bit of a continuum in terms of, well, how sophisticated do I apply this approach? But it is a model, but it also is a practical to-do list. And it also serves as a bit of a framework or a job aid even for the instructional designer. And that is a prioritization of learning and development content tool, approach, model. So that's what I thought we would chat about today. And I applied it recently with a leader development program as well. It was kind of a soft skill kind of development thing, rather than say work procedures, operational kind of teach me my frontline job kind of application. Works for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, excellent. So before we launch into that, I just wanted to mention that CPT stands for Certified Performance Technologist. This is the certification program of ISPI, the International Society for Performance Improvement, of which you and I are both long-time members. I used to have the CPT, but then as I was getting closer to retirement, I didn't renew it.
But it's important to note that you do have to renew, and there's it's not like you just earn this and you have it forever.
And it's not all about
like other
check cleared. It's it's kind of a rigorous.
It is, and I'm pretty proud of that. I'm really proud. Everybody asks me about it. I talk about it. It's like, this isn't just. I mean, those are good too. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, this one I had to.
Yeah, they had to do stuff and have people attest to the fact that you did it, and it had positive results.
I like to take. They had to sign an affidavit.
Yes.
So it isn't like we're screwing around here. This is big time stuff.
Yeah, and your check had to clear, by the way, probably. I'm just guessing.
Well, yeah. Yeah, because I had to pay for the big thing that's on my walls.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. All right. So let's just dive in. Tell us more about this.
Sure. I thought what I would do is just kind of outline what the problem is that this thing solves for the instructional designer.
Good start.
I want to start there. What problem are we solving? Why other approaches might not, or at least I've been dissatisfied with other approaches to prioritization of content. What I do with this, which might be unusual or maybe a bit not what a mid-career instructional designer would do typically. And so I want to nudge them into being a little bit more of a maverick and to take and trust their own agency that they have. So those are some of the things that I was thinking about. Plus the money shot is, what are the criteria that I use and how do I apply it? So I thought that's where I would start off. So prioritization for me as an instructional designer and performance and learning and development professional is absolutely essential. I find it's one of the ways in which you address much of the ills that we see in our profession. We are fighting some battles. We're always fighting for battles for relevancy and appropriateness, and we see where the money goes, and do they believe us when we say, and do they meaning stakeholders truly get us and the value we bring. I think it is a little bit of a kind of either the rubber, I don't know who said this first, but I always comment or copy it, where the rubber meets the road or the rubber meets the sky. Okay, do we get traction? And I think this really helps. So oftentimes where it really comes to play is when there's too much stuff.
Yeah.
So a stakeholder says, we want it all because we've never done any of it, so we want it all, right? So let's say in the context of this leadership development, it was a program that had been in place for many years with different committee members over time. And as such, the stuff started to expand. And you have this kind of SME creep. I saw that recently online where there's just, could we add one more module on this other subject? And the context for this was leader development in the context of a United Way campaign. And I was working with our local United Way, and they have a program, and I think many United Way programs have this, which is called a loaned executive. And so if you think of this volunteer organization with some carryover staff that are professional, but they are not in the L&D business, they're in the fundraising and program management business. They're not in the L&D training and development business. And so I was helping them because they had gotten to a point where it was just too unwieldy. A loaned executive is a volunteer senior member of an organization who is also sponsoring United Way campaign at their company. And so what that value that loaned executive brings is they get their phone calls answered when they call the executives around central Iowa and say, would you consider upping your pledge and having on-site rallies and getting your employees to raise money for the United Way. So it's a fundraising job, but it's temporary. So it would be, like in the third and fourth quarter of the year. I think the engagement was maybe 8 or 10 weeks. And so they stay employed at the company, but they are working full time. So that's a little bit of that context. So if you can imagine, we've got 2 weeks of onboarding, solid, come to class, sit there, and stuff in the evening, a litany of stuff. Feedback that I got from some recent participants was, we never learned what the job was until the last day. I don't know if that is this triggering to people. It's like, oh, yeah. So this was the context of this project, and that I've done it multiple times but as I was thinking through what we're going to talk about today, Guy, that's the first project that came to mind. When we prioritize, a common one is Eisenhower. You go, well, okay, is this, what is the Eisenhower, the 2x2 on the Eisenhower? I wrote it down. It's urgency of the issue, So an issue raises up, and you have to decide what to do, as Eisenhower did, President Eisenhower, and the importance of it. And so you assess, and then there's a 2x2, and what do? You delegate it, or you take action, or do you just let it go, or whatever? And I find that's really a critical thing for prioritization for any leader. I'm reminded of a David Letterman sketch. Is that a thing? Is this a thing? And so we think about that as a skill set, competency, if you will, for a leader. Is that they have to decide if it's a thing or not.
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter? Anyway. So that's what I was thinking about that. Well, it was a little bit ineffective for me because it was too broad. I was like, is it important or not? Well, how do we define that? Also, over my career, I've done a lot with project managers. And project management, the PMBOK, the book of knowledge, and that, they focus on things like probability that this thing will matter. And then you talk about, okay, what if it does happen? Does it have any impact on my project? And particularly on that, the iron triangle of cost, quality, and time. And so then you go, okay. And then you also have proximity in the project management matrix. So you think, oh, well, this could be a thing. It would have a huge impact, but it's not going to happen for a while. So we'll just take incremental steps to prepare for that risk. Okay. So I'm thinking about, well, those are useful techniques, but not useful enough for me as an instructional designer, because I got a bunch of other stuff that matters more to me as a designer, because I'm not prioritizing my project in the conditions. I'm prioritizing the stuff, the material, and I want to learn, because I'm likely not the only person who knows about this content. I got somebody else. I got other stakeholders. Maybe they're subject matter experts and others. So that's why I found those kinds of tools a little bit lacking. But the framework, the idea of prioritization, using others' input, using maybe some facilitated approach to it, maybe having other expertise in the room with me to inform me in real time, and also the different kinds of thinking and who's more analytical than the other person, who's more bigger picture, who sees it from the seat of a user, who sees it from the seat of a engineer, let's say. And also to uncover, maybe like I did with the the loaned executive program, uncover, oh, well, this topic is my topic. And so I really care about it because it's mine. And then that's why it's important, because it's mine. And I am you should listen to my Hippo. Have you heard of that guy, Hippo, Hippo?
No.
I thought maybe you would have heard about it in your military service. But anyway, highest paid person's opinion.
Okay. I probably have. I just forgotten. I'm old people. What can you do?
Well, I know that you probably heard other ones too. I mean, in terms of different acronyms. Colorful ones, more safe for work, others less safe. But hippos. And so we had some of those in there, but I could facilitate around them, and I could learn where my, the sacred cows or the elephants or any other kinds of concerns that I might have. So anyway, here's the payoff. What I came for then is some based on something I learned in some instructional design workshops I got from some online and other kinds of resources. Oh, this is helpful. And here they are. Understanding prior knowledge, task complexity, task frequency, and the consequence of error. And when I was introduced to this through some mentoring relationships that I had with some other very senior, and also through some of what I've learned from our ISPI colleagues over the years around what makes for good task analysis. Those were the criteria: prior knowledge, task complexity, task frequency, and consequence of error. So I thought what I'd do is just kind of explore that a little bit more depth, each one, about why it matters.
Sure.
Okay. So let's just talk first about prior knowledge. when I was a young pup coming up, we do the surveys at the end of class, and then they would say, we need more pension examples. So I'm teaching a class on, I don't know, communication skills. And I worked at a large life insurance company that had pension products.
Mm-hmm.
And that became kind of a joke for us as a team. Oh yeah, need more pension examples. Yeah, I guess so. And we never took that seriously. But what that person was trying to tell us is make it relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Don't teach me how to use these key principles of communication. Teach me how to do my job.
Yeah.
Do this. I kind of know these. This is like the golden rule, and be nice to people, and use please and thank you, and listen, and all these other kinds of interpersonal skills. But then teach me how to deal with an unhappy customer, or a confused agent selling product. Okay. So what I realized with prior knowledge is, well, they kind of know this, but they don't know the application.
Mm-hmm.
Upon further review, now I know the application is what they need that they don't have. But prior knowledge means this is what they're thinking, and I need to relate the new stuff and connect it. And if there's a disconnect, well, then they don't have relevance. And they say, well, that was a waste of my time. I don't get why I even need that.
Sure. Yep.
And also I've learned the hard way too, that just asking people what they already know is an ineffective way to determine what their prior knowledge is. It's like, well, do you already know this? Yeah, I do. And I'm like, yeah, these got 10 years in the business. And then I put and sometimes I'll put a little exercise, like 4 questions around the financial statements, and they can't answer them.
Mm-hmm.
What are 3 kinds of profit?
Yeah.
Well, you've been a manager for 10 years. Don't you know this? Holy cow, I don't know this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So prior knowledge is so critical. And then again, you have to assess that. Now, what do you use? Will you use, maybe it's rank, maybe it's other people's opinion of those people. So you ask managers what their people know, but then also you have to, look at work samples, look at what their work output looks like. What common problems do you see? I see. And then what can be teased out that is caused by the fact that what they already know is influencing what they are going to know. And also too, it's like many times when you're on a software project, right? You're just like, well, this is a new system and a new procedure. So our job incumbents, well, it's all new.
Yeah.
And I think a super smart mentor of mine said, requests for training for new people should be expected, right? Someone smart said that. And, training for existing employees should be inspected. So let's do that analysis. So prior knowledge is the first criteria. Second one is the complexity of the task. How often we teach things like doing a performance review conversation. Lots of performance review training, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't appreciate how complex doing that well really is.
Certainly.
Yeah. So it's like, what do I say? What model do I use? How do I what's the flow, beginning, middle, and end?
Mm-hmm.
Particularly if it's not good news.
Yeah.
Right? It's difficult news to deliver. You got emotions, you got self-talk, you've got what they say back to you. You've got way to express and explain the differentiated performance. This is what good is. This is what medium. This is what does not meet. That's complicated, right? And unfortunately, oftentimes we don't really appreciate that. We'll say, well, here's the model. Good luck. Or make sure you do it.
Yeah.
Here are the dates when everything's due. And we're surprised when those experiences are less than satisfactory. So that's just like one kind of thing where we don't really appreciate the complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Or we think certain things are way more complex than they really are, like a financial statement. Oh, we think those are really complicated, so we will summarize them. We will, God forbid, dumb them down. Subject matter experts use that phrase. So yeah, we said, so we'll simplify it because we want to protect you, Guy, because I don't want you to feel any kind of confusion. So I'll just use some simplified version.
Mm-hmm.
So indeed, we have to really look at that kind of in an objective way. So that's complexity. So let me just stop there. Is there a couple of things that you want me to go a little further on, or
no? I think this is familiar. You've framed it a little bit differently than I've seen in the past, but yeah, I would agree that prior knowledge, and we've got to beware about survey results and things like that, and interview results where people tell us, yeah, they know that, and then you're almost afraid to really test that out with them because you might embarrass them because they think they know it, but they really don't, and so that leads to
another podcast right there that we're afraid of what the answer is. Podcast. So that's why we don't survey well, because we're going to find out that our stuff is junk, or somebody is going to, I don't want to put people on the spot, or there's all kinds of reasons why we don't do analysis. Well, I can say I don't have time or whatever.
Yeah, and then tax complexity. I think that is critical because, and then it's, if you're an instructional designer or learning experience designer, what seems complex to you from your seat may or may not be complex to the people that you're talking about because they may understand it at a very nuanced level or at just a surface level, and you could be at the same level with them or not, and you may not appreciate really it sounds simple. It's just 1, 2, 3, but there's 17 sub steps to 1 and 47 for 2 and 3 for 3, and it's just and there are barriers and rocks in the road all throughout the whole thing.
Way along.
And so from if you're really not into it, so teasing that out and determining what prior knowledge really exists and how complex is this that we're going to address. Is it to the learners, to the target audience? That's tricky. So you got to assess those things.
And when again, you and I we've had a few of these conversations over the years, so where the red flags kind of come up when you're talking to an expert. So he says, well, it's pretty straightforward. You do this, 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 and this, and that's my red flag going up. All right, you've automated this in your head to a point where you don't even realize. And by the way, you're the supervisor of this work now. I'm thinking this in my head. I'm not saying it. And so it's just because the supervisor says this is what they need, and he thinks it's pretty straightforward. And then I realize, no, my analytical brain is telling me that's a lot more complex than he's given. And also, there's a lot of complexity in the performance environment.
Yeah.
To either get in the way or, support or not support the follow through in the application and things. So those two criteria are the first two. Let's talk a little bit about frequency and consequence of error. I was discovered this again with this United Way project, frequency. What I mean by that is the opportunity of the learner or the performer in our business case to do the thing that we're teaching them to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So we taught them about talking to business leaders and executives, business owners and executives about doing a rally the first time. We taught them how to do that. And then we added some calling to the practice, to the to the training. So we would say, okay, we're going to teach you. We're going to practice. You're going to feel confident, competent. Okay, let's go to the phones. And they went and made a couple of calls. What do you think, Guy? They didn't answer the phone.
Yeah.
They got voicemail.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, I was all ready to have this, persuasive conversation with this executive, and I had to leave a voicemail instead. Oh, well, that didn't really work. So it's like, oh, well, we had to understand the opportunity to perform. And so how frequently something is done, and that tells me, oh, well, this is done frequently, but it's also scheduled.
Yeah.
right? And so what's going to happen and how the performance context, or to be more simplistic, do they do this once in a blue moon, or does it happen every time they pick up the phone or every time they return back to the workplace? They have to do lockout, tag out. Every time they show up for work, they have to do the trade with the previous shift. And they do this briefing every day.
Yeah.
Because indeed, when you learn something, if you don't use it, it begins to decay almost immediately. There needs to be ongoing and rigorous and authentic follow-up. But I'm also reminded recently of our plane crash in Toronto and how well those flight attendants and other people on the plane responsible for the safety of those passengers quickly, I think there was an article recently said, like, training kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, okay, from a frequency standpoint, how many times have they had to deal with an airplane turning upside down on landing?
Yeah.
And save all the people?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in real life, probably the first time.
Yeah.
But in practice and in training, dozens of times, if not hundreds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with all different kinds of scenarios, and it just kicks in. So I find that very fascinating when you look at when you think about the frequency of things, but then what does it mean when it's infrequent, complicated, and then my last point around consequence of error.
Yeah.
When you go look at that as an example, well, gee, that informs how we train it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it informs how we execute this, how the kick in happens. And that goes to my last one, consequence of error. So if they did not do that well, people would have had significant consequences.
Yes. I mean,
right?
All the stakeholders, the company, the shareholders, the regulators, the customers hanging upside down from the ceiling or what used to be the floor.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty, what is prima facie? It's pretty clear that that's a high consequence of error. And so I have discovered that not much of what we do has that kind of consequence of error.
Yeah, we're not usually dealing with things where death hangs in the balance.
If we miss a ship date, it's high consequence of error. Yeah, but you're not hanging upside down in a plane, so it's not that
It's on fire.
Right? But nonetheless, I think it's useful to think about, will somebody notice if you make a mistake, or does it cause, cost, quality, or quantity concerns?
Right.
Exit material. So let me just kind of put this all together in context. What I will tend to do then is, if I'm going to apply this thinking, I may work with a colleague and I'll just explain it just like I've explained it, but in this conversation. Mm-hmm. So are we thinking about all of this stuff? Because they'll probably have user manuals, and they will have PowerPoint decks, and they will have maybe agenda that people are saying needs to be in the program. And they'll have this kind of loosey-goosey around. And we say, well, okay, how do we view this? And let's view this independently. Let's just look at all this stuff. Maybe we can make a list of topics. Mm-hmm. Or in the case of the United Way, that's what it was. It was topics. And I didn't have good task analysis. I had to kind of tease that out and infer a lot of tasks from some of this. Why would they want? Oh, so that when they meet with a big donor, they don't embarrass us. That's kind of the task. Because they would have these donors come. And I'm like, well, what difference does that make for the fundraiser? They get anyway. I was always trying to stay open-minded, but sometimes this stuff was just there because somebody asked for it. So anyway, this is how I would approach it. I would make a list at about the same level of abstraction. So if we're going to stay kind of high level, or maybe I might break it down just to make it useful. So if it says customer service, it might be too broad. Man, to break it down. Taking inbound calls, doing outbound calls, or something. I can break it down just a little bit. And in the case of this leader development program, they had, they have broad things around policy, giving policy. Well, we got to break that down a little bit because it's just too broad. It's not useful. And again, none of this is terribly scientific either. You just kind of get the sense of objectivity when it's all very subjective, frankly.
Right.
So anyway, make a list. And then we would start the conversation in one of these topics, let's say prior knowledge. And I would work then with a group of stakeholders. So in this project, I think I had 6 or 8 people who had stakeholder to this training.
Mm-hmm.
One was the coordinator, one was the sponsor of the whole thing, one was like the expert in giving and compliance, another one was another volunteer in the past, and a couple of alumni of they were loaned executives in the past, and so forth. I had several. And so what I did was facilitate them. I said, okay, of all of these things, and they were familiar with all of it.
Yeah.
I knew it was all in there. What do people kind of already know before they arrive?
Mm-hmm.
What's the one thing they know the most about before we get them? And I mark that as high. I go, that's high. That's a high prior knowledge. Okay, now we'll go back to the beginning of the list, and now they've got a benchmark to compare to, subjectively.
Yeah.
Well, is it that high or is it lower?
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of the same. Oh no, they don't know a thing about this. That's low, 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 low. Everything about this is low. No, I don't want it. Don't go too fast. And we just work our way. I don't know. We might have had 20 or 30 topics, right? So it went fairly quickly. Then we went down and we looked at how difficult it is to learn. And it was difficult to learn. We did the same thing. What's the most difficult thing for them to get right? What's tricky?
Yeah.
Then I went on to, does this happen a lot or does it happen only once in a while? And then finally, does it matter? So what we found was high consequence of error, entering the pledges into the system. Getting that right was high consequence of error, and it happened all the time. And oh my goodness, they don't know how to do it. So indeed, that's the application of these kinds of things. Well, I was just thinking then, as I think about how I approach this, might be some key points that I've discovered. Again, just a little bit about, again, my background. I depend on really super smart people to inform me on how to do this. And then when I learn something I think is fairly clever, then I try it.
Yes.
And then I try it, and then I goes, oh. And then I go back to the people who are, informing me and teaching me, and I go, oh yeah, they did tell me about that. I just missed it, and so forth, and iterate. By no means am I inventing any of this stuff, but there are some things that I have discovered that are so key in doing this. First, as I hinted at earlier, is you do this in a group. You don't do this by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's really key to get that outside perspective from the people who've been there and done that, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a full-on, long, involved thing either. So that's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk to stakeholders of, I want to do some prioritization of all 30 of these things, they're going to think that's going to take too long.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, no, we'll be done in about an hour and we'll have a lot. And I'll do my job. I'll be prepped. Make sure we use those stakeholders' time wisely. And then I'll send them on their way and I will create the report. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so critical, in terms of the critical thinking and decision-making input for you as a designer, because it allows you to apply some of this thinking. You discover what is the unique context, maybe some of the nuance, and also what you need to adjust for time, method, and content. Oh, well, if we're going to train this, we've got a bunch of loaned executives that are not sellers.
Yeah.
And they are mid-career. So in other words, they've actively chosen not to be salespeople for some reason or another. So how do we make them confident, competent, and persistent in order to win new contributions and successful programs? And so as I looked at that, I'm like, that's complex.
Yeah.
That is prior knowledge. They may have preconceived notions about what this means, and might be barriers for them for learning and to doing. And so we broke it down more, gave them more chances to be successful in the training. So when they got more and more confident as they went, then they also became much more likely to persist.
Sure, exactly.
Okay.
If you have the confidence of your own competence, then you're less fearful,
Yeah,
more
yeah,
willing to try it. You're more willing to deal with any, hiccups or bumps in the road.
exactly. Who knew that I was going to use the research from my friend Penny when I was a graduate student at the University of Northern Iowa in speech communication?
Hmm.
She did her master's thesis on self-efficacy. So yeah, that's when I first started about, well, the impact of my anticipation of success to whether I will actually succeed is significant.
Yeah,
A significant
exactly.
connection between that. So anyway, that informs some of this. Um, but yeah. See what else? Working through to clearly define when you're working with these stakeholders on this, and they will conflate importance with difficulty
Yes,
often,
yeah.
or they'll conflate. And so you just have to gently facilitate and remind them, no, really, we're just, how is it as complicated as task 3X,
Hmm.
or is it less complicated?
Yeah, setting some benchmark and then calibrating everything else to that. So, what
Mm-hmm.
does medium mean?
Yeah.
And when you were talking about that, it reminded me of a time where somebody said, "Well, that's just not high. That's double high."
Mm,
So rather than debate that, I just went back over to my flip chart and wrote
yeah.
two H's:
Sure.
high versus medium versus low. And then I also said, well, some of these things might be zero, not just low, but zero low. I
Yeah.
mean, so
Mhm.
so I had this scale that I built with two
Exactly.
H's, and then when people would argue about, well, I think that's low, and other people would say, well, that's medium, I would just go over there and write M/L. It's a medium low. It exists somewhere in that space there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Satisfy people rather than just argue that out as to whether it is definitely an L or definitely an M. No,
Mm,
it's in that middle there, and people were satisfied that, and that we could move, like as I promised you earlier we would do at the end when the
mhm.
dust settled. What do you take exception to that we've documented here, and you're not uncomfortable that you were part of a group that put that
Right.
that letter down, and we'll revisit it and minimize that. And most people would go, yeah, no, that's okay. It's all fine.
Yeah.
It's good enough. It's good enough for what we were doing. And I think that now you have a consensus as to, what's really critically important, what's really just important, what's, the medium and low and the zero stuff when that would come out. That was often funny because I would have said, well, you said this was necessary, but now you're giving it a zero. Can you help
Hmm.
me
Yeah.
understand? Not
Well, in
defend it, but help
context.
me understand because I don't get it. It's
Hmm. Yeah. Because in context, right?
yeah.
Well, if I look at this in isolation, it's absolutely vital. Why? Because I just said so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you put it in the context of hanging upside down in a crashed airplane,
Yeah.
well, I don't really care if I have Diet Mountain Dew and regular Mountain Dew. It's really not the contents of the drink cart,
Yeah.
right? So again, I think that's really valuable. And I love that point that you just made. Stuff falls off because that's what happened in this project.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff fell off. We had all these things, and then we realized they realized.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a feeling going in, but it wasn't up to me to just to throw stuff out. But they realized, well, that's just in there because Susie Q
Yeah.
and Charlie A, the big donors, wanted to come and do this presentation. And then we're a volunteer organization. That presentation was on the agenda. The new volunteer who's running it says, well, what did we do last time?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll do that again because
It must have been important.
and then it has a life of its own. Because, who's got time as a volunteer? I got 4 hours a month to give to this project, so
Yeah.
I'll just use what we did before.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. So stuff falls off. And also going in as an instructional, you know what kind of time you have.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much for the prioritization, but for the material or the training.
Yeah.
Oh,
you've got 4 hours or 4 days, but not 4 months, So.
Exactly. Or I've got 3-hour sessions I got to fill,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 of the sessions are already spoken for. I've got right?
Less flexibility.
Yeah. So the time factor in terms of the ultimate deliverable influences criticality of prioritization, right?
Mhm.
And then you also will discover in this, it reminds me of another point you just made. It's like, oh, well, if this is so critical and it's high priority, what we're doing isn't enough.
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of I would tell groups that, well, this is all part of a manipulation here. I'm gonna manipulate you, so beware of that. But my goal is for you to decide what's really important and what's not, and you guys to come to some sort of consensus here. So
Mhm.
beware, that's what I'm trying to do,
Yeah, yeah,
so that we can decide where we really put the effort in, because some of these things we're not treating in depth enough. We're not giving enough, practice with feedback or whatever that's necessary to really build that confidence,
hmm
so that people can go forward and persist.
yeah, yeah. So don't, it's something else you were describing, and it made me think of what is not in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Early on in my career, I learned from my performance improvement experts who are coaching me. You got examples and you have non-examples. What's in and what's not in. Here's not what we're doing. We're not debating online versus in person.
Yeah.
We're not debating direct instruction versus an e-learning module.
Mm-hmm.
We're not debating the efficacy of, should we put it online in a reference, or should we maybe have a PowerPoint deck?
Yeah.
Should we get Steve to present this, or should we have Mary Beth present it? Right? That's not what we're debating here. We are really analyzing the material in the context of performance and the performer as best we can.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I keep coming back to this, because then when the other outcome you'll see is that you have partners in this stakeholder group as opposed to adversaries.
Right.
And the more they learn, the more helpful they become to the instructional design project.
Right.
So then they were like, oh, now that I think about it. Right. And then, like you mentioned earlier, is like, well, what we're doing, what we're anticipating to do through this learning and development project is inadequate on the highest priority things. So what came of this United Way project was mentorship, because they didn't have that before. So each of the loaned executives had a staff member. They were in like small groups. I think what did I tell you? There were like 20 of them or something. And they were in groups of 4s and 5s, and they each had a staff member that would mentor them. So we just built that in throughout the opening several weeks. We structured that so that they could have these daily downloads. They could have some one-on-one time. They can do status reports. They can do that kind of operational, but then they could also get a little bit of coaching and some support and tie back, because we realized that by talking about it and giving them confidence and a feeling of competence, but it was still a little fragile.
Yeah.
Because the real world would happen and be like, I wasn't ready for that. And I'm not really prepared, or I don't want to, or I thought I was pretty confident, but now that I think about it, I'm not. So we just need that. We found that was inadequate. So again, you think, well, what are we really doing? We're prioritizing.
Yeah.
You might think that my work output is then a report that prioritizes high, medium, and low, all the tasks. But I find that it's so much more value.
Yeah, it really informs all your downstream steps. It really puts everything into a context, so you can decide, where do we give things short shrift because that's all it really needs, and where do we really focus, and where is the initial learning experience not adequate because people are going to need some hand holding, some talking it through. What happened? What did you do well? What did you not do so well? So some coaching or some spaced learning through whatever mechanism or means that are available and appropriate.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
that's what I think. That's great. I guess that's what I do.
Yeah. No, and so do you have resources that we can point our audience to, and
Of course.
that outline
Yes.
all of this?
I do. And then I have found that they're inadequate. Kind of just generally speaking. And I was reminded of this recently, Guy. I was presenting at an ATD event, and I just offhandedly, with a group of instructional designers, I just often, how you prioritize, you guys prioritize your content. And they were like, we don't really do that.
Yeah. You just take whatever we're given and run with it.
Or I defer to a committee to tell me, put this in. And so I prioritize content by asking someone else what I should put in, and that becomes the priority.
Yeah.
And so when you do like any kind of searching or you want to learn about this, you find that it's either too vague, like the Eisenhower Matrix, or too general to the project success rather than to content different. So, but I do have, and I'm willing to share some, this process that I've just described.
Yeah.
I've got something that kind of gives, a couple pages on how to do it.
All right. So will you be able to give me a URL for that?
Of course.
I can plug that into the show notes and.
Sure can.
Sure can.
Excellent. Yeah. And maybe even an example.
Cool.
I think I do have one from this United Way. So I'd be happy to share that. I don't think I'm giving away any proprietary United Way subject matter.
Well, maybe we'll get we'll help others with fundraising kinds of exercise, whether that's United Way or other applications.
But that's I'm happy to do. I would like to just also maybe think of another thing in terms of the application. You mentioned, different ratings, H's and H pluses and things. I've actually gone to the point of actually converting these to numbers.
Yeah.
And then having some kind of a formula that then that takes away prior knowledge priority. So if there's high prior knowledge, it takes it away from priority overall.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But then multiplies the other criteria. So it kind of gives some weighting.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, because if people if there's a high level of prior knowledge, then you don't need to spend much time figuring this out. It's really the things that are without prior knowledge that have complex tasks that have that are infrequently performed and have high consequences. Bingo, that's where that falls to the top or rockets to the top of your list.
Sure does. Sure.
Well, no, I really like what you shared with us here today, and we will include whatever resources, URLs that you have for us in the show notes. So I invite the audience to take a look at that, and your LinkedIn. Hopefully will drive people to your LinkedIn profile and to your websites as a business entrepreneur. But, if we can shift gears here a little bit, one of the things that I'm hoping to do, is advance people like yourself who have a performance mindset, and regardless of what language or wording you use for that, I know that you are one of those. So what I'm looking for is a chance to broaden people's networks so they can begin to follow others like yourself based on, you referring the audience to them. So can you name 1 to 3 people who are also into this whole performance improvement, performance-based instruction, learning, training thing?
Yeah.
That others may not know about. You don't need to, mention, industry known names or whatever, but some others that you think have been doing work in the trenches that, we should bring some attention to. Yeah.
As a CPT, right, we want to add value.
Yes.
We're evidence informed. Those are a couple of key values to us, and I take that very seriously. So what I've got for you, Guy, I got 4. And as I look at my list, I've got 2 potentially known quantities, or at least when you hear them, you say, you should know these people, right? And then maybe a couple that you maybe don't know because they're maybe primarily in another space. but yet I think the Venn diagram overlaps and does inform some of our practice. So let me just start with the known helpful stuff, and I'm going to start off with Roger Kaufman and mega planning. More and more, we're being asked to put things in context of sustainability. And I look at mega level strategic planning, sustainability before it was cool, particularly your ideal vision of what it is we're here, purpose-driven organization, being clear about that. We are here to improve the lives and the health of populations. We are here to have natural ingredients touching 90% of the world's population. I've got a couple of clients that's what they have. That's their, they're trying to do the greatest good, right? And they have purpose driven, and you're finding this. So going back to Dr. Kaufman's work in this space, mega, macro, micro kind of planning, ideal visioning, and then what would we take as evidence that this is occurring at the various stages, and finding things you can count, and using some of that critical thinking. So that's my first one. So I don't know, where would I was looking for good ways to steer people to some of the I do have a URL of I think it might have been a colleague of his at Florida State, right? He was at Florida State for many, many years, that has some of his material summarized.
Well, we have a site, HPT Treasures, and so the late Roger Kaufman's many materials. He had written over 40 books. He's got a whole bunch of things. I've done I think I've got 4 or 5 videos that I've done with him over the years, but we have all that kind of the URLs parked on a page at HPT Treasures, and so I will definitely include, point people to that so that people could follow up on that. But
the good news, there's a lot. The bad news is there's a lot.
Yeah, very true. Yeah,
we need a curator, right? And I'm so glad that you've done that. So that's my first one, Roger Kaufman, as I think about some of the performance-based planning, critical thinking that we've been talking about. Another one is Will Thalheimer, and he's still active, and he's still out there kicking. He's got a new book on getting the best out of e-learning and training, and he wrote a book for the CEO or the C-level executive, and what they need to expect of us as a profession and as a function. And he also has a great book on just kind of going back to what it means to do a good learner survey, and just kind of redefining all of that. And he's got some good insights into just kind of being more performance-based in your overall assessment, learning and development assessment strategies and things. You can find him at Will Work Learn, on online, and Work Learning is his website. Okay, so those are a couple of known commodities. Some that you may not have heard of. Neti Sakdeva, and I will spell that out and put that on. But Neti is and her colleague Jim Hewitt are research to practice learning experts from the University of Toronto, and I find just about everything that they put out is extraordinarily useful. They're in excellence in teaching and learning space for teacher educator more broadly. They do focus in on, in many respects, college or university level education and excellence, and they have very good evidence and research based. And they're particularly focused in on retrieval practice these days. But again, I talked about the Venn diagram. It's like, there's just not nearly enough retrieval practice in our L&D programs. Gosh, we don't want to make people uncomfortable by having them not remember something, so we're not even going to ask. Right. So, indeed. So they have really, really good stuff. So I will. She's available on LinkedIn. I'm finding too that these resources on LinkedIn is kind of, people are shifting there because of the long form nature of it, I think, and people are putting more of their expertise available to us with citations and resources and things. Right. And similar, another Canadian, as it turns out, Blair Kittle.
Yes.
And he does a great job. He's a research to practice expert in education as well, and Blair Kettle. And find him again to talk about retrieval practice and spaced learning, about things around assessment of learning, and more to the point about the tactical method, instructional method of a e-learning course or as an instructor.
Mm-hmm.
So Blair's, different elements of this, right? And one of the things that you could hang on to is retrieval practice. Yeah. Another one that he's talking about is direct instruction, and how we've kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We say, well, we don't want to have lectures. They're too boring. So we skip direct instruction completely, and we do this exploratory thing. And here's a case study, and figure it out. And I don't even know what model I should be using. So particularly with novices. So those are four.
Those are
Roger,
excellent.
Will, Nidhi, and Blair.
Yeah, so Nidhi and Jim, I'm not familiar with them, but I am connected with Blair and Will, and was with Roger, and those are four, five excellent names here, if you're including Jim in the mix of that.
Yeah.
Let me shift gears here again one more time, and thank you for those names, and providing an explanation of why you included them. I think that's great. Can you talk for a few minutes about, from your perspective, from your seat in the House, what do you believe are some of the biggest problems / opportunities? Because I see these as, opposite sides of the same coin. But so enterprise learning and development, workplace learning and development. What are the challenges that you've experienced, and what are some of your suggestions for leaders and practitioners to begin to address them?
Yeah. Okay, let me just list them off.
Okay.
There's nothing new under the sun. That's one. Showing our value is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Being evidence informed and performance based, and dealing with implementation challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So the big problems. So generally, again, this is what's not on my list. Oh, do we use AI? No, I think that's the first time that has come up. We are set a record, Guy, that we have not mentioned AI in a L&D and performance improvement.
You've just ruined it.
I ruined it. Hopefully the AI we're using to get the transcript is going to skip over that.
There you go.
But I think about some of the things that I've been talking about at conferences and development. It's like, God, did I do this in 1991 and now I'm doing it again?
Yeah.
Are we talking about this just with, is it new wine and old wineskins or whatever that is, right? And I don't want to be like, get off my lawn, grumpy old guy. That's nothing new. But there is some kernels to new. There's today's thinking. There's context for all of this. But we do still struggle with some of these kinds of things. Like, we have to show our value.
Yeah.
We have to talk about our value. We have to deliver value, whether we can talk about it or show it. We still got to deliver it.
Mm-hmm.
We have agency that we don't think we have. We do have it. We can take initiative. We can go underground. We can just say, no, this is the evaluation and learning survey that we're using, as opposed to just kind of abdicating any of these kinds of choices.
Yeah.
I can make a choice about whatever graphic I use in my e-learning program or how I'm going to illustrate this with dual coding. Okay. But are you going to then defer to the subject matter expert who says, well, I don't really like your color choice there?
Yeah.
And you're like, we know how people's eyes go across the thing, and this is why I'm doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you have agency, so stick up for yourself. So that's a constant challenge, I think, is our own professional, dude, there's a good bit of evidence behind this.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing it this way. Now, if am I going to die on this hill? No. But I would say, well, you can use some of that thinking. There's some attitude out there that any kind of evidence is too complicated or too academic to be considered.
Mm-hmm.
I run into that frequently.
Yeah.
Like you read an analysis or a meta study of various things like direct instruction. Let's say, well, God, this is useful. Or here is today's learner expectation of getting a new job in the next 12 months. That's a high proportion of people.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some studies that are more than just surveys that are going to have some correlations, some like, well, I don't really have time to read that kind of thing. I don't really. So it's just this anti-evidence, anti-rigorous kind of bias that I see sometimes it gets in our way.
Yeah.
And our ability to translate what we're learning to how we go about doing it.
Yeah. Research to practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So any of these folks that you can find that are in that space, like research to practice translators, curators. Mike Taylor is another one. I'll throw his name out.
Yep.
In terms of his ability to use tools to get that curated content to us once a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's always something in there I find interesting, and I would say once a month or something that actually I get to use. But otherwise, I'm like, oh, this is a really interesting tool.
Mm-hmm.
Resources and stuff. So, yeah. So those are some of the problems. I would say it's like we it's not as new as we think.
Yeah.
We know what to do. We meaning our profession.
Right.
And we need to, use our agency and influence. Be a maverick. Really more of a maverick.
Mm-hmm. I think these are great because I think, there's a lot of things are marketed as if they were new and improved, which, maybe some language and imagery has changed, but most of the fundamentals in performance-based instruction, training, learning have been around for a long time. And so, the field has seemed to drift away from the gurus back at NSPI before they changed the name to ISPI. Back when I joined in the late 70s and was involved in the early 80s, they would, crab and complain and bemoan the fact that a lot of this didn't get traction. Things that were in the 60s, they were bemoaning all this in the 70s and 80s, and yet, it's just because it's not the path of least resistance. There is some work, and I think when people don't have the competence, the confidence, they won't be persistent. They won't say that, hey, we know what we're doing here about screen layout, and here's the evidence for that without getting, people don't want to necessarily know, how the sausage is made, except on occasion they do. But they, so we need to necessarily explain that. But when they challenge us, we need to be somewhat prepared to defend the choices that we make and decide whether this is the hill to die on, so to speak, or not. Where do we stand our ground? Where do we just, give up? Where do we, my thing was I always tell clients, hey, I was in the Navy, so I will salute you and say, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I will do as you directed. I wouldn't do it myself. It was up to me, but it is up to you. So I will go and do your bidding. And most of the time, not always, but they would say, well, hold on there. Not so fast. What do you mean you wouldn't do that, but you're going to go do it anyway? Well, and that gives me an opportunity to kind of push back gently with some rationale if I think that there's a case to be made. And hopefully I didn't raise the whole thing if there wasn't a case to be made about there's a better
and all along, you're trying to make better the circumstance that you're in, right? You do this, influence that if you can. If you can't, then here's an interim step you could do, don't just, since he's going to talk for an hour with 66 slides, well, that's what we'll do. It's like, no, you can blow a whistle at 20 minutes and then ask the participants to discuss what was just shared, and then blow a whistle again, and then he can continue.
Yeah.
You can do various things to make it better. Now, is it all the way? Right? You can stop your project and ask priority questions.
Yeah.
Anytime. Say, well, really, they might do they already know this?
Yeah. So we're connecting to prior knowledge, but then we don't have to belabor it. We can,
exactly
connect it to.
That's why I was saying earlier, it's on a continuum.
Yeah.
It's on a continuum. Yeah. Well, this has been fun.
Well, Dan, thank you so much. You are, as I kind of tried to intimate a little bit earlier, that you are one of those guys here. You're one of those performance-based or performance-focused or performance-intended, kind of folks that you're really not just into delivering an experience. You're delivering an experience as a means to the ends of improving people's performance competence, performance capabilities back out on the job, and you're trying to make it real. You're trying to, help them back on the job, not just in the learning experience, but that you see that as a means to an end. And I've always appreciated that. And I was kind of surprised when I said, hey, whatever you'd like to talk about. I thought we would talk about business acumen and people understanding finances and things like that, which is one of the things that I've always appreciated about you, because I think that when I learned that early in my career on a project, when I had to help product managers figure out, what are all these, financial statements and how do they work, and what's a forecast versus an analysis of the actual numbers, so how do, and so I think that was so critical in terms of our own business and helping to decide, what hill do we die on? Where do we really need to make sure that we have an impact here, because of the consequences are somewhat significant. How do we assess this? If we, how is score kept in business? If we don't know how a score is kept, how can you play the game if you don't know how score is kept in any game? And so I that's one of the things I appreciate about you, and I wanted to mention that here at the end, so that people will say, "Oh, maybe I should go check out Dan's websites and kinds of things he has to."
Yeah, because in that context, I use a lot of my own lived experience to do that analysis, and at the same time, while I'm facilitating and training, you're paying attention as well. And then what you're describing too is a common, take any subject matter expert, let's say financial statements. Well, they don't know any financial statements. Well, if they knew them, what could they do?
Yeah.
And that's the Roger Kaufman questions, right? So, well, if they knew that, let's not confuse means and ends here. So, okay, well, if they knew that thing, well, then they would come to the right conclusion when we have a variance.
Yeah.
Or a better troubleshooting. Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or they would not drag their feet when the executive says, this is our priority now. And change has to happen. Those are the kinds of things that I work with every day. That's why I live in that space between that skill set of decision making, or communication, and the business result, which is softening market or new product launch.
Yeah. That I think that most. Yeah. Maybe this is no overgeneralization here, but too many people don't understand how business people might look at a situation and make an assessment as to whether or not that's worthy to address or not. That's a $10 million cost, but we got a $100 million problem over here, or opportunity, and therefore we're going to live with the $10 million problem because there's $100 million over at stake. So how we think because we've uncovered a valid learning need that we have to address it. Well, there's maybe bigger fish to fry. So
and one connection back to the beginning when I said we need more pension exams.
Yeah.
Take that out and say, well, now we need more soft skill decision making, because AI is going to do the technical thing for us. And CEO's survey just came out and said we need soft skills. That's the number one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, novice instructional designers will say, well, let's get out a whole bunch of soft skills training then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we need pension examples. Don't teach me the soft skills. Teach me to do my job
Right.
using these. And that's what the managers and the executives are asking for.
The late Joe Harless said that soft skills are simply hard skills out of context. Some words to that extent.
Yeah.
But so we don't understand, they're soft because we don't understand, communication skills. Well, in what context? Now, if we put it in the context, you got a heated exchange with an angry customer and you're trying to, reduce the temperature.
Exactly.
Well, that's the context there. That soft skill ain't too soft when you're in that kind of, when you're learning how to deal with those kinds of things, if they're, authentic and real. But Dan, I want to thank you so much for, participating with me in this and for all of your contributions over the years. And I hope our audience will find their way to your site and resources, because I think you've got.
I'd love it.
You do a lot of value add.
Yes.
Thank you,
whatever
my friend.
This is, I've got a lot of it. So
yeah.
Thanks.
All right. You have a great day.
All right. Bye now.
Cheers.